Now, though, let's talk about this. Bailiffs dealing with unpaid traffic fines. Local councils are sending bailiffs to drivers home to collect unpaid traffic fines, and these have doubled since the pandemic. More than 18 million penalty charge notices were issued last year. That's according to data collected by the Times newspaper. This past year alone, local authorities have referred 4 million penalty charge notices to enforcement agencies, up from 2.4 million the year before. I think these cost as well, don't they? Don't they have to? I don't know much about it. We'll ask our guest. 1.9 million in 2019-20 and 1.3 million in 2017-18. The increase has also been attributed to the rise of clean air zones, like ULEZ zones, or low traffic neighbourhoods. Those have got me. All the roads that I've driven on my whole life, which is quite a long time, suddenly I'm driving along them, obeying the speed limit, doing everything right. I get home, a couple of days later, there it is, you drove in a low traffic neighbourhood. I didn't know. Because I'm concentrating, guess what, on driving and not hitting people or killing people or whatever it is else you can do with a car. We're always being told to be safe, aren't we? How can you be safe if you're scanning every road that you've driven on for the past 20 years to see if it's changed? And also, why am I paying road tax when there are certain roads I can't drive down? That makes no sense either. Well, VED or whatever it's called. A decade ago, 83% of fines were related to parking, and then people got wise to that and stopped over-parking. So what do? They punish you another way. 19% were for road tolls and 8% for violation of clean air zones. I just don't... every time I take my car out now, it feels like I know it's going to cost me. It's going to cost me. I just know it. Let's talk now, though, to Joanna Marchong, who's from the TaxPayers Alliance. Joanna, a very good evening to you.
Hi, Petrie. Thanks for having me on.
Hi, very welcome. Look, we all know that councils are struggling, but I thought they weren't allowed to use these fines for anything but improving parking.
Yeah, I think it's really important to know that these penalty fines are obviously going up for a number of reasons, most of which you already said. The increase in clean air zones, congestion charges, the change of rules in bus lanes, for example. It just seems like it's another way in which the council is trying to make residents pay more money to them.
But the thing is that with these fines, do they care about the roads? Are these councils actually doing it because they are concerned about clean air, or, as most of us suspect, are they doing it just to raise money from unsuspecting, honest, hard-working, decent people?
I think the long and short of it is that these councils are bankrupt. More and more are filing bankruptcy or issuing warnings of that. And realistically, instead of getting their spending right, instead of spending, say, 2 million on adult cycling lessons or 52 million on EDI roles, or even going to council award ceremonies for £350,000, instead of cutting back on those kind of spending, they're just trying to increase their tax receipts.
How can we... We're powerless, right? We are absolutely powerless. I just mentioned there are a couple of roads that I've driven on for the last 20, if not 30 years, right? And I'm not expecting them to have changed their usage. It's a blooming road. As long as I obey the rules of the road, I feel I should be allowed to drive on them. But increasingly now, do I have to look at every single road sign, every single sign, of which there are thousands in London, and therefore risk a crash just to make sure I don't get fined? I mean, that's the thing. The balance here is totally out of our favour. We are guilty, and they don't have to. We have to prove we're innocent. They don't have to prove we're guilty.
Well, it's a real war on motorists here. It almost seems like it's a get-rich-quick scheme by councils to try and fleece taxpayers of more money. You see that council tax has increased in a majority of councils. The TPA released research recently revealing that council tax receipts have increased by about 26 billion in the last 20 years. And are residents really seeing the bang for their buck? Are they seeing the services that they demand or they want? It just seems like it's another fine or another punishment on residents, and especially motorists now.
But is there any way we can wrestle any control of this? Because you get caught, like there was a camera, there was a photograph of my car driving on this particular road, a bang to rights. The thing is, I didn't know. There was no, and the signage is tiny. But what do? I just paid it because actually I know that I'm onto nothing because they're going to go, well, there's your car.
Well, I actually think a lot of people are in your situation, Petrie, where they just kind of give up. It's too long to argue and fight your case. But I think if I've known success stories myself personally, where people have actually spent the time arguing, writing back to the council saying, your sign was turned the wrong way, or it was too small, I couldn't see, it's not facing the right way. And they've actually got their claim dismissed and they haven't had to pay for anything. So the council are almost banking on you just giving up and saying, oh, well, it's too much hassle and bother. But residents should 100% speak up for themselves and actually go against this. It's not fair, and they shouldn't be made to pay it.
The other thing is that I'm always really kind of surprised about, Joanna, is that those roads that we know, especially in London, I mean, that's my manor, but those roads that you know rack up millions and millions of pounds every single year from unsuspecting motorists who are not trying to break the law. They're not drunk, they're not stoned, they're not speeding, they make a wrong turn or they do something, or there's a yellow box junction on a right-hand turn, which there is again in Chiswick, or in Hammersmith actually, but instead of changing the system that clearly doesn't work, right? It is clearly catching people out in a disgraceful way. They could actually just change the road, but they don't because they become reliant on that extra funding.
It's exactly as you said. You're completely right in that if there's a junction not working, it's cheaper and it works out for them. They're benefiting by not changing their infrastructure and not doing anything about it. And they're failing in their duties to residents. And again, using this money, being propped up on it, councils are going bankrupt. They're wasting money on frivolous things. Last year alone was spent in councils across the UK, over £700,000 spent on council staff working from home, their internet bills. So they're reliant on this money now from penalty fines, and they'll find it any way they can. Residents should know that it's not being spent in the best way possible.
No, and that's the point, isn't it? That it's not even, I suspect hiring bailiffs is not for free, is it?
No, well, it's not for free. However, if they've sent a bailiff round to your house, they'll seize your car unless you pay for it. And the increased charge that drivers will incur will now include the charge of the bailiff. So it's not exactly free. I mean, residents are paying ridiculous sums for it. And you have to remember the residents that are paying their fines late might be people suffering from the cost of living crisis who don't have the money straight away, and they have to delay their payment and then being treated harshly by council staff.
And basically, the only power that we have is in voting out a council. But we've seen this with governments, that they say, oh, yeah, we're going to get rid of that tax or that, and then they realise just how lucrative it is, and then they don't do it. So really, that's just it for us then as motorists. We're just done.
It's a worrying situation. It really is. I think we should have faith that if enough people complain, it's TPA-run petitions all the time where we're urging people to speak up and we're saying, you know, things don't have to be this way. So I think we should remain positive at least. But yes, it is an issue that needs to be sorted.
It's really hard when you're just driving your car along roads that you've always driven along, and suddenly, and look, I don't support people doing this, but I do understand that a lot of people now, just for the mistakes they make, are using number plates that can't be recognised. But that you sort of go, well, if you're being fined for breaking the law, fair enough. Don't drink and drive, don't speed, there are reasons for that. But just to make an honest mistake seems to be incredibly harsh.
And of course, there are people that are choosing to break these zones or park in a space that they're not supposed to because it's easier for them. Those people should be penalised. However, I mean, the DWP said that they were predicting a rise in fraud cases over the next coming years. There are people like that exist. But just because people like this exist doesn't mean that our point here now is invalid. Like, the two things can be true. And we all know how hard it is for motorists these days. I mean, the amount of schemes pushing people to get rid of their cars or to, save the environment, as much as it's a valiant cause, it's extremely stressful and harsh for people to deal with.
Well, I mean, driving, I predict, will become the preserve of the rich again, the very rich. It'll only be those who can afford it. Where does the Taxpayers Alliance stand on this pay-per-mile scheme that we know is coming down the tracks?
The TPA, we've done a lot of research on the issues for motorists. So we broke an investigation last year on LTN zones, and we recognised that it's a big issue, and whether motivations for charging people extra money to drive down the same roads that they used to, as you said, as they used to know for years. And now the whole scheme has changed, and the fact that you can be penalised so heavily is worrying. But there is an issue in how the money is being spent that's going to be raised. Is it going to be raised to fix roads? Is the service going to be any better?
Well, I mean, clearly not, because the roads...
I'm not optimistic.
No, me either. They're not fixed. How do you feel about the fact that councils want to separate these fines from that process that you've just mentioned there, that at the moment the money has to be used on road schemes? What they want to do is have the government remove that requirement so they can use it to top up their pensions, buy themselves lovely biscuits or whatever else it is they want to spend their money on, or our money on.
It does genuinely seem like a get-rich-quick scheme. Councils have made ridiculous spending decisions, whether that be on pay, organisation of the council itself. I'm talking about the EDR roles again, but it's ridiculous spending decisions that have led them to the situation where, again, bankruptcy is on the horizon for a lot of councils, and many of them are already experiencing this. And the true people that are going to be hurt in the whole process are residents, because they're going to be the ones forced to pay for it.
Yeah, I'm always reminding them when I have anything to do with mine is that actually you work for me, not the other way around. But there you go. Joanna, thank you very much indeed. Joanna Marchong there from the Taxpayers Alliance.